Hello there, history lovers. Welcome to Hightailing Through History, a history podcast where two sisters get high and surprise each other with a story from history's vault of the weird and the wonderful. I am Laurel, normally the eldest sister. Tonight, I am not joined by my sister and co-host. She had vacation. We were trying to get this recorded before she left. She was sick. She ran herself on the ground. I was like, girl, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it. You go relax, enjoy your vacation. I'm going to get my sister from another mister, my best friend, Kelly Ramsey, to join me.
Yay!
Oh my gosh. Now, if you can't talk about the history of sex with your best friend, I mean,
who can you talk to?
Who can you talk to? Kelly, welcome to Hightailing Through History.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I was thinking I was just going to snag my husband because he's here, he's around. I was like, hey, can you do this with me? He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, history or sex history talk with your husband. That's good, And he started not feeling good, and I was like, wait a second, this is a huge opportunity that I need to grab with both hands.
I love grabbing sex with both hands, so that's awesome.
Everybody, this is episode 70, which means that this is part 2 of the history of sex. So thank you also for making part 1 one of our best episodes yet, fastest growing yet. We hit 100 listens very quickly on it.
Yay!
I can't imagine why that is. Sex? What? Oh my gosh. So thank you all for that. That's been wonderful. I'm glad you guys are all enjoying it. And in part 2, we are going to be picking it up in the 1500s, taking it through the age of Enlightenment, through the Victorian era. Those Victorians, they're fucking wild. Yeah,
wild.
That whole 19th century. We're going to have some fun with that one. I can't wait. Then through the 20th century into the present day. Whew, it's a big one. We have a lot of things that we're going to be covering. It's going to be the practices and attitudes around sex for these certain eras of time and these groups of people. But we're also paying special attention to 6 different subtopics that were voted on by you over at Instagram. And these topics are sexual science in the 19th and 20th century, food and aphrodisiacs, contraception through history, sex work, erotica and pornography, and sex and hygiene.
Sorry. I love porn.
Yeah.
It's true.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
And so regarding sexual sciences and medicine, just to give our little medical disclaimer, because folks, you're going to be hearing about a lot of different kinds of sexual sciences and medical methods regarding our reproductive systems. We are not doctors, and we are not giving any sort of medical advice, and nor should you really rely on a lot of some of these medical procedures and remedies that are given in some of these because they're kind of wackadoodle. So please don't follow any advice and consult with your medical professional and your doctor for that. And with that taken care of, oh, here we go. We got it in our hands. We're so ready to go. Kelly, hi. How are you doing?
Hi, Bestie. I'm doing fabulous. I'm very excited to be here. Episode 69 was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really love those ancient freaky Greeks, and
Yes.
I'm very excited to join this discussion.
It's going to be an enlightening discussion, and we're going to learn a lot. We're going to grow together. I feel like as a whole group, we're going to learn some things, maybe things you didn't want to know, things that you'll be glad to bring up at, dinner parties.
Oh, yeah.
Fun facts, maybe like a bar quiz night kind of thing. You might have some of these facts you can pull out your back pocket.
Yeah.
So what are you relaxing with tonight?
Well, tonight, unfortunately, I'm still suffering from a head cold. So while I would normally be stoned to the bejesus, I've had to take a hiatus. And so I am drinking a hot toddy out of my favorite Deathly Hallows mug. And Justin used a really premium bourbon. So I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah. What do you got going on there?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for asking. I have a Pinot Noir, which is it's come out of a box, but it's lovely. And then I have half an edible, so I feel I feel like that
Mm.
might be trying to kick in with its magic right about now, and which is great timing.
Yes, I'm jelly.
All right. Previously in part one, Katie left us in the Middle Ages. Sex work was prevalent, but also was the awareness of STIs, though their understanding of them wasn't exactly there. They just knew like sex equals itchy sometimes.
Ew. Civilization. They came up together.
Right. Right. Here it is. And we were warm and cozy in the bathhouses. We were listening to how people were actually embracing bathing, and how
Thank
bathhouses
God.
also became a place for sex workers to find clients. And Katie says the church put the kibosh on anything sexy, including public bathing. And that left us standing there. We're dripping, we're cold, we're wet. Someone hand us a towel.
Slap you on the ass with it.
Yes, slap you. But here's our catalyst for change. It's going to go ding, 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 ding. Get some sound effects there. That is the sound of Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany. There's no actual evidence of Martin Luther actually like physically nailing them to the door. That's just like a lovely visual and mythos. The publishing of the 95 Theses on October 31st, 1517 was a proverbial bomb dropped on the Roman Catholic Church. At this time, the church had just like absolute power and control. They were very, very powerful across all of Europe and reaching into the world. Then there comes this teacher and monk who publicly and directly challenges the doctrine of the church, Martin Luther, particularly the idea that the church has to be the intermediary for your salvation of your mortal
Mm.
soul. Essentially, Martin Luther said, hey, folks, the church wants you to like purchase or earn your forgiveness. But like fuck these guys. I'm sure that's exactly
We
what he
don't
said.
need them.
Fuck these guys. We don't need that. The foundation of the Catholic and Christian, that faith being that Jesus died for your sins. He's like, if that's what you believe, like that's between you and God. Like you don't need
Yeah.
somebody, you don't need to
No
pay somebody for
intermediary.
forgiveness. That's not how that works. And so like what if you're poor, then like go fuck yourself. You're gonna go to
Pretty
hell,
much. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, wait a second, this is all messed up. And Martin Luther just shook the foundation of the Roman Catholic Church, which is refreshing.
Yeah.
This is called the Protestant Reformation. And out of it, attitudes towards sex started to loosen up. People were like, oh, it's okay to have sex because I enjoy it, and it not being strictly for baby making.
Well,
As
shit. Go
long
ahead,
as,
Martin Luther.
yeah, as long as it's within marriage,
Cheers.
of course, that's still the stipulation. But yeah, it got people going like, well, wait a second, like, what else can we question, essentially? Later in this century, about 1543, we have the scientific revolution, and that ignites with the establishment of the scientific method. The scientific revolution is a time of drastic change in scientific thought that takes place in the 16th and 17th century. So it's like the 15 and 1600s. And it emphasized abstract reasoning, quantitative thought, understanding how biology works and nature.
Oh,
The
so
view of,
fascinating.
yeah, I know, the view of like nature as like a machine, a process that they can observe, and it frequently can be replicated, that sort of thing. Like, so you can really experiment well with it. And again, the development of the scientific method. So yeah, this stuff's exploding. People are like, we've got questions and we need answers.
Yeah.
And this is the springboard for the age of enlightenment, or the age of reason. Historians label the start and end of the Enlightenment differently, but most say about 1685 to 1815. So it's like a long 18th century, as they call it. It's a little bit before, a little bit after.
Enlightenment takes time.
And it does. In the Enlightenment, sex is seen no longer as like a sinful but necessary for procreation sort of thing. They're like, hey, this is a lot of fun. We can
Yeah.
we can have some fun with this. And it's okay to have fun. And also,
For the
hey,
men. For the
for the
men.
men, right? Otherwise, you just
Not you
got like,
ladies.
yeah, right. There's certainly double standards for sure across the board throughout this tonight. A lot of attitudes towards sex and the pleasures surrounding it begin to harken back towards the ancient Greeks and the Romans. There's this more open, liberated attitude towards sex that humans are sexual beings, as well as like homo and heterosexuality. So that's still going on as well. And it's mostly in the upper classes where you're going to see it happen, but it's a little more open at that time too. The 1500s through the 1800s is a period of time of various revolutions, both conceptual and literal. And historians often mark the Enlightenment as the first sexual revolution or sexual liberation.
Oh.
And Kelly, the ones that took that liberation and just ran as far and as fast as they could with it were known as the libertines.
Ah.
The 18th century libertine.
Hot.
Hot,
Really
yeah.
hot.
I know, there's something. Yeah, I spend a lot of time with them tonight, and they made me so angry. You'll see why maybe here in a minute. But the 18th century libertine, typically a man of noble birth, or at least a man of means, but also a ruffian, a scoundrel, a cad, a rake, if you will.
Oh, a rake. I like rakish tendencies. I like to read a lot of naughty books about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It's a trope for sure.
Oh,
And these guys like take that and just go as extreme as they can with it, basically, is what I'm trying
as
to
men
get
do.
out. And it's just like, oh, wow. Okay. You could get away with that. That's terrible. I was going in this portion of research knowing a little bit of like what I was going to get, but then I just found I just fell like Alice deep into this rabbit hole and I just couldn't get out of it. Like I said, just close the book on and get out. And I was like, but I can't. I'm stuck in it.
Keep reading.
I keep reading. And I've read things that I wish I'd never read. And seen things that I wish I'd never seen. But depending on who you're talking about in their body of work, it does get very upsetting and disturbing. We won't be going into the full ick of all of it because it's not the point of it all. But they are a common denominator when we look at attitudes towards sex, gender roles, erotica and pornography. That one's huge. Aphrodisiacs and contraception. So a lot of the things that we are talking about, alas, the libertines are the linchpin.
Damn.
So the libertine movement can be defined as hedonism unchecked. Like I said, these like ruffian rake boys just running wild. Extreme
raping,
debauch.
pillaging.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. The thought being that pleasure in all of its forms be the sole purpose and the only thing that you seek, damn whatever it takes to make that happen. And damn whoever's in the way. Like it's a very narcissistic, like me first, this is what I want, I'm going to take it. Libertines were frequently wealthy men, although history does have a few lady libertines, which were often mistresses of monarchs. I think King Charles II in England, one of his mistresses, like she's considered a libertine. But lady libertines are much more tame than the boy ones are. Giacomo Casanova.
Casanova.
John Wilmot, Earl of Rochester. The Marquis de Sade, or a few infamous names. Yeah. And you know, you're like, oh, I'm recognizing some people here. Yes.
Rochester.
Ooh, yeah. And we're going to start with him, actually. So he was, so John Wilmot is his name, Earl of Rochester, an earl during the English Restoration at the end of the 1600s. John Wilmot was a poet and a dirty one to boot.
It's the only kind of poetry worth reading.
Yeah.
None of that hearts and flowers. Get out of here.
Yeah. So here is one of his poems called Regime de Vive. Vive, it's basically like regime of life, basically. But my French is terrible. Now, folks, if you are a little more sensitive in your ear holes, I am going to say the C word here in a minute. So make sure you're not listening at like
See
full
you next
volume.
Tuesday. It's poetry. It's fine.
Yeah. Put your earbuds in. Don't like maybe turn us down if you're sitting in line at the waiting in line for like the school pickup.
Mute it.
So here we go. I rise at 11. I dine about 2. I get drunk before 7. And the next thing I do, I send for my whore, even for fear of a clap, as in the clap. I spend in her hand and I spew in her lap. Then we quarrel and scold till I fall fast asleep. When the bitch growing bold to my pocket does creep, then slyly she leaves me, and to avenge the affront, at once she bereaves me of money and cunt. If by chance then I wake, hot-headed and drunk, what a coil do I make for the loss of my punk? I storm and I roar and I fall in a rage, and missing my whore, I bugger my page. Then crop sick all morning, I rail at my men, and in bed I lie yawning till 11 again.
Wow. That is some next level debauchery. I am shooketh.
Right? I was
I
like,
would have robbed his ass too, though. He didn't even get her off. He spent right in her lap. What?
For
I
fear
was
of a
waiting for,
clap.
like, this cunt getting eaten. He was like, no, that's not happening.
It's like, no, I'm going to throw up on you, and I'm just going to like come in your hand and argue with you and yell at you, and then I'm going to pass out because I'm an angry drunk.
I would have robbed his ass too.
Yeah, right? Same.
Bye.
And he sounds utterly charming, right? Whoever the narrator is, whether it's he himself or just like other men like him. I mean, a drunk asshole who we can only assume from the writing sexually assaults his page, and then, is like horrific to the woman he hired, and then, just lives his life like that, like, and the men under him, like that. So the regime of life. Yeah.
That's horrific. And
Mhm.
also, I didn't know what the word bugger meant until very late in life. And now when I read things like that, I'm just like, oh wow, that's like, I mean, raping anyone's terrible. But your poor page. Yeah,
Yeah.
just probably
Right. I
not.
mean, yeah, that's the thing. I'm reading that going, well, I'm sure his page didn't consent to that, So you're like, wow, he is just all around work.
Awful. Awful. But it was very poetically, it was good prose
It's good
anyway.
prose, right?
It flowed. You should probably email that to me. I'll read that again.
I can do that. If he's writing about this really gross mechanical sort of monotony of like this life where you kind of sounds like you're just running yourself in the ground.
Yeah.
But he does also have other poetry. He has a poem called Signor Dildo, which actually is pretty fun. So
Oh, I'm definitely going to read that.
it's good. He's interesting for sure. John Wilmot was hardly the first person to write dirty poetry or stories or, say the C word or anything. I mean, certainly not. But he does seem to be one to do so in such of like a in your face, no euphemisms here. Like he is telling you what it is. And the libertines after him are classified in their own genre of filth and smut called the libertine novel. And being that erotica and pornography are one of our subtopics we're going to be chatting about, we get it like a pie in the face in the 18th century. You're just like, what? Erotica and pornography? Like, boom, like that, splat, cream pie.
Everybody likes a cream pie.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Generally speaking, the 18th century was a boom for literature as literacy expanded across urban areas. So that's great. More people are learning how to read. And so books in general and literature are blowing up. But people are like, hey, where's the dirty stuff? Now that I can read the words, like where do I get
Bible? Yeah. Where's the porn section? Come on.
Yeah.
We're all sluts for smut.
Over the course of the century in London, printers quadrupled just in that city alone. So people were reading, which is great. And they're reading works of Enlightenment authors, but, so the profound thought and philosophy and all these things. But we know that sex sells, as we mentioned. And so the sales of erotica is like, boom, for both men and women, which I think is great.
Nice.
And then when you add in like depraved content, quote unquote, someone's like, oh my gosh, this book is disgusting. Oh, is it disgusting like this book? No, no, no. This is next level. We're talking nipples getting cut off. Like this is insane. This is people are like, what? I
Oh,
gotta, I
that's
gotta read
horrible. Yeah, I
this.
gotta read that.
Horrible. I gotta read this. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's just like taboo after taboo, broken, super graphic sexual descriptions and things that, are just like really shocking. It was flying off the shelf. And a man that did that, unfortunately, did it well, was the Marquis de Sade.
Ah,
Have you seen Quills
I have
with
not.
Jeffrey Rush? Okay. There's a few movies made about a few different libertines. Um, there is actually The Libertine, which is about John Wilmot. That's the Johnny Depp one, I think, from a few years back. Quills is about the Marquis de Sade. There's also other movies about him, but I've seen that one. It's got Jeffrey Rush and Kate Winslet in it. I think it came out at like 2000 or 2001 or something like that.
Love Kate.
I love Kate, and she's so great. She's so great in this. But yeah, it's something.
Okay, I'm gonna
He's
add it to my
something.
watch list.
Yeah, he's something. So he is born Donatien Alphonse Francois. There we go. The Marquis de Sade in 1740. He authored a number of novels, plays, short stories, various political leaflets and propaganda. His writings frequently involved a variety of things: violence, sadism, which is where we get the word sadism and sadist from, is Marquis de Sade, which actually comes
No
about
way.
years later. But yeah, that's where we get that from.
Wow.
Anal sex, he talks about that. And then he gets in his like shocking taboo stuff of sexual assault, but frequently involving children,
Ooh.
blasphemy, people like that's not okay in that time period, torture, kidnapping, imprisonment.
Ooh.
And then you're like, oh, it gets real dark. And then with all of this, he has like this little thread of philosophy discourse woven into it. And now, of course, for anyone listening who has never heard of him before, if you know nothing of the man himself, one can easily say, well, we can separate the art from the artist, or I'm sure he wrote about these things, but maybe to create social commentary or shock value, but he didn't
Mm.
believe and never do those things. I do absolutely think his works are important. I think they're important to discuss. But yeah, he did do these things.
That's why I'm like, but I mean, we're not
I'm
talking
nervous
like Chuck
laughing.
Palahniuk here, like I could
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. This
Yeah.
guy sounds like a piece of work.
Yeah. So he did do these things, and he spends 32 years of his life imprisoned and ends up dying. One of them was the Bastille, actually, right before
Oh,
it was raided, and Bastille Day and all that. But he ends up dying in the Sharonton Asylum, actually in his
oof.
70s. So the same sort of thing holds true for another infamous name, Giacomo Casanova.
When I hear Casanova, it's just like, oh, some kind of Casanova, and I immediately think of Pepe Le Pew. And as a kid, I was like, oh, Pepe Le Pew. So like he just really loved that kitty cat, and oh, he was so romantic with the roses. And now you look back and you're like, he's a fucking rapist. Pepe Le Pew just taking what he wanted.
Hmm.
Casanova just taking what he wanted.
Yeah,
Dirty scoundrel.
you've nailed it. So Casanova, he is born in Venice, Italy in 1725. He's also a libertine author who, though his works don't go into quite the extreme sadism as the aforementioned Marquis, he was also accused of a list of sex crimes and wrongdoings, including with his own daughter. He's got
Oh.
this is where I'm like, oh man, I'm stuck. I'm at the bottom of this rabbit hole and I'm going, this is awful. I really want to get out of here. I can't. I can't get out. Because then you
Ugh.
just read the next story and you're like, oh no. Oh
It
God,
just gets
no. Oh
worse.
no. It's worse. So
Ugh.
like let's climb out. We're gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
Being as he frequently went down as this quote unquote seducer and lover of women, his many volumes of memoirs give insight into contraception of the day, as well as
Oh.
belief in aphrodisiac. So here we go. Let's get out of the libertine
Oh.
novel. Aphrodisiac. So the word comes from Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, sex, and beauty. The idea was that certain foods or drinks would make you amorous and just like want to get some, right? Lift that libido. And there is a long list of things that have been considered aphrodisiacs throughout history and in various cultures as well. But some big ones are chocolate,
Mm.
oysters, saffron. I didn't know about
Oh,
that one.
I
I was like,
didn't either.
oh, okay. And
Sprinkle,
champagne.
sprinkle.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
that's definitely one.
Right. Because you're
Yeah.
drunk as hell and you're like, yeah, this feels good. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
panties fall right off. It's fine.
Tip it back. Let's go. Food has long been linked to sex, whether it's having dinner and knowing, like, you're looking across the table at the person, like, knowing, like, oh,
Your
yeah,
dessert. Yeah.
yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mash you. We're gonna smash later.
Smash.
Smash. Or it's chocolate, body paint, and whipped cream, like whatever those sort of links are. I know I'm like, ugh, I'm just like
Ugh.
smelling the old milk.
Uh,
Um,
yeah,
like
no,
food and
food and
sex are like,
sex.
yeah.
It's one thing like aphrodisiac, of course, but like during the act, I'm gonna need that
Mhm.
to stop.
And I'm so glad you said that because I was doing this section and I was specifically doing aphrodisiacs, not necessarily food in the bedroom, but like that was where my brain went because it makes me mad. It kind of grosses me out.
So gross.
Like I don't want whipped cream in my hair or like a sticky
No.
floor.
That scene in Deadpool where she eats mashed potatoes off his ass. Come on. Come on. No.
I was thinking of this is like the most angering scene for me is the food scene in 1986 classic 9.5 weeks with like a super smoking hot 80s Mickey Rourke, right?
So
Oh,
hot. And Kim Basinger?
Kim Basinger, yeah.
Both super hot.
Super hot, right. Yeah,
Until.
until.
Yeah.
And so I went back because this is my like little side homework that I went back on
Did you
YouTube.
watch
I'm going to
it?
put the link in the show notes because I was like, is it really as bad as I remember?
I haven't seen it since I was 12. My mom's friend that house sat for us when we went on our one and only family vacation. He house sat for us and he left that cassette in the VCR. And I watched it and I was like horrified by that scene. Horrified. And that ruined it for me.
So awful. Oh man, yeah. Then that probably was it. That could have been the moment where you were like,
That was it.
no, food is not okay for me. So I put that in the show notes. So if you're like, what is all this all about? Go watch it. And if you're not mad and just disgusted by the end of it. So I actually wrote notes as I was watching it and they're in bold. So I'm just going to leave this here with. So I just watched the scene again and somehow it pisses me off more. The fridge door is open the whole time.
Right?
He's feeding her
Wasteful.
all kinds of things. A jalapeno? Really? And then you rub it on her face with all the seeds? Oh my God. All the milk all over the place afterwards is disgusting. ... And the honey, the sticky fucking nightmare of the honey everywhere. Oh God. The ants.
The ants! This is how you get ants, Lana. My God.
So that's how I felt when I watched that scene again. Because I was like, I have to go back just because like food and aphrodisiacs turned to food and sex and food in the bedroom. And I was like, no, I hate this.
No.
I hate everything about it.
And I mean, every one of us, thank you, dear. Every one of us at some point has been chopping up a jalapeno and gotten that shit under your fingernail. Or maybe after you wash your hands, you rub your eye and it still fucking burns. He rubbed that shit all over her. I'm sorry. I have questions.
Like all over her face. She bites it and she's like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. And then she just, and then he takes it and just rubs the whole thing like around. He's like trying to give her this like multi-sensory experience. It is not okay in my book. And then he takes the little honey bear and he drizzles it all over her thighs and and then it's supposed to turn sexy. I'm like, there is no one sexy. I'm having sex with after being covered and all that. No, thank you. I'd be like, can I take a shower first, please? Like, and clean this floor. Let's close these doors. I'm not okay with them.
Did he really put that shit all over her face? That had to burn.
It had to burn, right?
Rude. Root.
Mickey Rourke. He's sitting there and he's like smiling in his hot Mickey Rourke way. And
I mean, I probably would have let him too back in the 80s. Not now, Mickey. Sorry, but then 80s Mickey Rourke, he probably could have done that to me and I'd be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It's one of those things where like the way he talked in a lot of those movies at the time too, it was like that Brooklyn accent, but he talked kind of soft. So you'd
Ugh.
listen and
Yeah.
I'm like, what's he saying? He's talking so soft and
Yeah, you have
he'd
to, like,
say,
lean in, like, "Tell
yeah.
me more,
And
Mickey."
he'd do like the thumb like on his lips and he'd be like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
this.
really like the way
Woo,
you do. And I was like, what you like the way I
Jesus
do what,
Christ.
Mickey? What is it? What is it that you like me doing?
Like,
So
falling all over myself, yeah.
so
Oof,
anyway, the food scene in 9.5 weeks is
gross.
yeah,
Deal
gross.
breaker.
Deal breaker. You don't need that.
Yeah.
But hey, food and sex for a lot of people is either it is that. Maybe that's really hot for some people. I'm not going to yuck your yum,
They haven't
even though
seen
I
that
just did
movie,
for like
that's
the
all.
last 5 minutes. But anyway, but back to aphrodisiacs themselves as a
Mm.
as an entity. I know that's where I went. That was that other hole that I fell down.
Oh, no, that
I was
was a
like,
good one.
I was
I'll
like,
fall
man,
down that hole all day long.
I really like the way you fall down that hole.
Oh,
Okay,
Jesus Christ, don't do
all
the
right.
thumb
What
thing.
is the thumb? Oh
I don't
God.
know, but it does it for me.
I'm gonna just try and like. It
Ugh.
has to be a dude. I don't know. Does it?
Yeah,
Could it
it's like
compose
how
it?
Brad Pitt is eating something in every movie scene, and I am literally a puddle on the floor.
I know. Why is that?
It's
Like
I'm like,
always
"Can you just
gum.
eat a mango on camera for about an hour?" I'm fine with it.
Mango.
I'm gonna send Brad Pitt a box of mangoes.
But with aphrodisiacs, I mean, I hate it to be the one to say this to everybody, but there hasn't been any scientific proof to say, yes, some foods and drinks are aphrodisiacs and they totally rev your sexual engine.
Hmm.
A few of those things are really good for you. Like oysters are really good for you. Dark chocolate in moderation, that's also really good for you. They don't actually like turn your potential partner into a sex machine, though. Sorry to say, but
Foiled
I think,
again.
yeah, I know. I think there's something to be said about like the placebo effect of it all. It's like
Mhm.
thinking like, you know, ooh, I'm eating chocolate or eating an oyster, and
And
this is
now I wanna
sexy.
bang.
And I
Yeah.
want to bang. I mean, champagne again. You're drunk, like you're losing inhibition there, so that makes some sense. But I also think and they're all like, sorry, as I think about it now, they're all luxury products too. They're all expensive, and you feel kind of like luxurious
It's
and
true.
sexy and stuff.
Caviar, champagne. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm. But I was thinking like the innuendo of it all, like an oyster. I've never actually really looked at an oyster before, and I have a picture for all of you, which is up right now of an oyster. And if that's not a vulva, I don't know what is. There's something decadent, I guess, about him, and that's what makes it feel inherently sexy. And that's why we see them get written about by the libertines, because they're rich and they can do these sort of things. But Casanova, back to this guy, it said he ate them like crazy and loved to feed them to his partners, and he believed in their sexual powers. Casanova also had writings of forms of contraceptions that he and others used during the time, like a lemon rind being used as a cervical cap for ladies, like a diaphragm, basically.
Sounds
Uh,
acidic, but okay.
right.
Okay.
I'm like, ooh, there's some things going in there that I don't know if we like really need to have a lot.
Yeah.
We need all these things in
Okay.
there.
It would smell nice. I
Right.
mean,
I mean,
who doesn't love
maybe
citrus oil?
the condoms at the time were made out of animal intestine,
Well,
right? So gross. Sorry, I should have warned you about
no,
that.
it's okay. It's
Sorry,
okay.
I will do that next time. During the 18th century of France, which is often considered like this epicenter of Enlightenment, the attitude around procreation changed. Unlike in the early centuries where women were married off and typically young, French women were getting married around 25 and men around
Yes.
27. So the marriage age is aging up, and both inside of marriage and outside, they were using some form of contraception. Oftentimes, the belief of like this, like be fruitful and multiply, was like more like, well, hang on a second, let's just like make sure we have money to feed all the kids, and we don't have, like, let's maybe pump the
Yeah.
brakes a little bit. We don't
It's a
want to
good
get
attitude.
pregnant
Yeah. Got to think about
every
these
time.
things.
Yeah.
The
So
best thing about kids is making them.
I get pregnant every single time, which,
Ew.
for most of history was women in the act being like, hopefully I don't get pregnant. Fingers
Oh,
crossed. If they didn't have any sort of form of contraception that they were using.
yeah. Jumping backwards 7 times is what I heard in the last
Yeah.
episode. And I'm like,
Hold your
gosh,
breath.
I
Jump
almost
backwards 7
died
times.
also with coitus interruptus because that shit
It's
worked
like,
for me
is
for
that a
like 13 years. I'm just
right.
saying.
Yeah,
reliable methods.
yeah. A pull out game better be strong. But you know, yeah. Katie's like, is that a real word? I was like, I mean, yeah,
She
that's like the
thought you
same.
made it up.
Like that's a
And I was
scientific.
dying. I was like, yes, yes,
I wish
Laurel
I was.
invented coitus interruptus because that's like the best term ever. And I love it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those women were doing whatever they had to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
And now they're shoving lemon rinds up their to their
yeah, no, it got
cervix.
some lemon rinds. I don't know if that was a really common thing to happen, but we did find Casanova saying, yeah,
Well, I
some of
mean,
my ladies
Italy,
have done it.
that is known for their citrus fruit. So,
Right.
yeah.
He's like, here's this lemon, just like carves it.
Looks like it'll fit.
Is this the size of your cervix? I don't know. I don't care. Shove it up there, lady. Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
geez.
what a gentleman.
What a gentleman. Yeah. Great seducer of women. Sorry,
So
I'm
he
going to
says.
give you a little warning here. Going back briefly to the condom made out of animal intestine.
I do want to know more.
Okay, it's really fast. So they were typically made from sheep intestine, and they had to be soaked for a couple of hours in order to be more pliable and
Malleable.
malleable. Yeah, get on there.
I'm just, is there a Google image? Like, I want to see what this looks
Oh yeah, let me send one to you.
like. Okay. I'm like horrified, but so curious. It's like shock and awe.
It just looks almost like just like a thin sheet of like fabric. It doesn't look really
Oh,
gory or anything.
oh, okay. I'm picturing like an actual section of intestine that they just like tie off one end and just shove it on there. Oh, well, that's not nearly what I was imagining.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I feel better about it.
So so yeah, they would soak it in water, and then it had like a little ribbon at the bottom. So if anyone's watching, you can
Make
see
it
it
smaller.
here, right? Tie it on because it was it's just almost like a little plastic or not plastic. I'm sorry, like almost like fabric, thin fabric, like sheet almost that was in a sort of condom shape. Little ribbon at the bottom. Tie it on. You can wash it out afterwards, and you could dry it and store it in a little box to be used again.
Well, I do have to like the
Cute,
reduce,
right?
reuse, recycle method. So I
Going
guess
green.
that's a win.
Mhm.
Yikes.
Hold that up.
Yeah, just go ahead and tuck that away for later.
And it would be in a little box because like men could then carry it around with them and, have for their mistresses or whatever it is, they can like have it on the go.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Wow indeed. Um to wrap up the long 18th century and the age of enlightenment, there was a more liberated sexuality that sprang out of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. Sex work was happening, philosophy, ideas, literature rippling forth. Erotica and pornography boomed due to the increase of literacy and access to books. And of course, the libertine novel is not the only erotica that's coming out of the 18th century, but it is slightly set apart from the more tame writings of the genre. While there was this sexual revolution, based on my research and reading a bunch of JSTOR articles, scholarly journals, what kept popping up in my mind was yes, I agree on this sexual revolution of the people. And yes, to a certain degree, both men and women were allowed to indulge their passions. But was it sex positive for everyone? Or was it just the seducer? Were all parties involved on board the pleasure train? Or was it one person getting their rocks off, So,
The man.
the man, right? Yeah, and so it's like, okay, cool, we got the sexual revolution happened, but I was like, what was the extent for everybody? Was it a revolution for all, or was it just kind of for some? It's rich men kind of doing these things that were like hedonistic. It was a liberation of sex, drinking. It was anti-church. It was kind of like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of that time, really. So I used the libertines as an example with their erotica and smutty works of fiction and nonfiction. And also, of course, we can't use like a small sample of like bored aristocratic men to be a large example of many. That's not fair, or is it scientifically sound? But most erotica was based in gender roles of man being dominant, the pleasurer, power, virility, the conqueror. Women were like a landscape to be conquered, or they were non-sexual or kind of passive in the whole thing.
Yeah, lay there and take it.
Yeah. But one small step forward in like that
Mhm.
first sort of sexual revolution. So the pendulum swings one way and then we swing it back the other way.
Damn it.
Because that's right, baby. It's the Victorian era. You got
Ugh,
hedonism and then, sexual revolution.
prudes.
And then, right. And that's always the thought, like, prudes, repressed sexuality, this whole thing.
Cover up the genitalia of the beautiful statues in Italy.
Mhm.
Just a shame.
Cover them ankles. Like,
Because
cover,
ankles are so hot. You better cover them.
cover those chair table legs because that is such a turn on, like all these sort of things. These poor Victorians, that era, the Victorian era, is generally defined as 1837 to about 1901. It's pretty much the reign of Queen Victoria about that time. The Victorian era, I had some beliefs like changed that I had. So like that's good. It kind of sucks for sex while simultaneously being kind of awesome for it. Talking about sex and sexuality during this time is considered inappropriate or taboo. Victorians are thought of as prudish or repressed. They don't talk about anything with bodies or anything sensual or sexual. However, pornography, sex work, and just general vice flourished during this time period. And so everyone's like, well, what gives, Victorians? And like everyone thinks that they just basically took all that sexuality and just stuffed it down until it just went underground. Which is kind of the case. Yeah, there's a more moral middle class for the most part. And then there's that upper and lower class that were like trying to abide by what society's attitudes towards sex were, even though privately they didn't share the same attitude privately as the public attitude of like, oh, let's cover up and be modest.
Gotcha. I
So
picture it like Bridgerton, ladies in the streets, freaks in the
mhm.
bed. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Victorians.
Right. And like I mean, I know it's Bridgerton's not like this historically accurate sort of thing, but that thought of like Lord Bridgerton, whatever, he's all buttoned up and he's got his top hat and everything like that. But then like he's very like formal. And then it cuts to him later, like banging somebody up against a tree later or something like that.
Yeah,
Like I was like,
hot.
oh shit, okay. The idea seems to prevail that the enjoyment of sex is pretty much for the boys, and, quote, the majority of women, happily for them, are not very much troubled by sexual feelings of any kind, which comes from, I know, right? Which comes from
Lies.
gynecologist Dr. William Acton,
Is this when they were
sex
calling women
talk.
hysteric? Here, the
Yeah.
hysterics. Yeah, you haven't had an orgasm, you've had 12 children. I'd be hysterical too.
Yeah. Yeah. You've just basically been a
Ugh.
baby machine,
Ugh.
Goodness gracious. And yeah, like I said, like conversely, there's a lot of historians and writings at the time saying, "Oh, women had sexual urges, but they shouldn't." Like so, like what Dr. Acton was saying about like they don't have sexual feelings of any kind, and good for them, like they're such pure, lovely creatures or whatever dumb shit he wanted to say. And and the other doctors were like, "Oh no, they feel them, but they just shouldn't. Like we need to just tamper
Dicks.
that down." And seeing as I spent so much time on Vice in the last era, I'm going to focus on sexual science of the 19th century, also known as sexology.
Oh,
This time period is really when we have the defining sexual history of this time, So anytime you talk about like sexual history in Victorian era, it's all about like the boom in science, this eruption, if you will, of science when it comes to sex and sexuality. And that's why I say it's kind of an awesome time for Victorian era. I'm going to kind of do this as a timeline so you can see how the progress happens. So we're going to start towards the beginning of the Victorian era, 1837. 2 years later, the process of vulcanizing rubber is discovered, which makes rubber more tensile and elastic and allowed for the mass production of condoms.
oh.
Mm-hmm. Actually made out of rubber, which is why why we have the term rubbers to begin
I
with.
had no idea.
It's from way back when we had.
P.S. What's a condom? No, I'm just kidding.
In 1842, German gynecologist Dr. Wilhelm Menzinger invents the diaphragm. So we get like,
Thank you, Wilhelm.
yeah, I know. Nice job, buddy. We get condoms, and then like only a couple of years later, we get the diaphragm. And finally, ladies have something that's more effective at pregnancy than anything else to date, preventing pregnancy, I should say. And that will remain in the number one spot until the invention of the pill, like a century later, the
Wow.
diaphragm. And hey, thank goodness we have mass production of condoms and diaphragms now, because there's something to be said about people having this sort of sneaking suspicion that like our respective male and female fluids like do stuff. In 1843, Dr. Martin Berry discovers that sperm cells can sometimes be found in the ovum, which is a human egg cell. And that started the ball rolling of being like, oh, hey, is that how fertilization happens? Like we, right? I
They
know.
didn't figure it out until then?
No, and this is the weird thing to me is 1843 Dr. Berry discovers that sperm cells can be found in the human egg cell, but then the actual like official discovery to say like yes, this is exactly what's happening isn't until the end of the century. So I'm like, what took like 40, 50 years to figure that out, you know?
A lot of fucking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right. That's part of the
I mean,
scientific process. They had to experiment.
yeah. I can only
I've got
think
a
like
theory. We're going to have to test it a lot.
got to get another look on that one. Got to get another look there, Jane. It's in the name of science. And you're like, oh,
Lay back and think of England.
okay.
Wow, I had no idea.
And in the second half of the 1800s, sexual research focused more on same-sex desires. So in 1869, the terms homosexuality and heterosexuality finally get coined. Research into homosexuality was led by German lawyer Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, who described male homosexuality as a natural expression, which was a pretty big deal because for most countries at the time, homosexuality was illegal or considered mental illness or both.
That's a shame.
Yeah, and so finally somebody like these psychologists are coming out and being like, "Well, hey, hang on, let's talk about this
It's
sort of stuff."
totally natural.
Yeah, and he's like, "Actually, I think this is like a totally natural thing." This huge book gets published in 1886, authored by German psychiatrist Richard von Krafft-Ebing, that gives over 200 case studies of various sexual deviations, air quotes there, that he believed could be treated as mental illness and with a variety of therapies. And this sets the stage for Sigmund Freud, who we meet, in a couple decades, and he's really connects. He's like the big sex psychologist I think a lot of people think of. But it's all starts here with Richard von Krafft-Ebing, or Ebing.
Interesting.
Ebing. It's widely believed by those in the field that this is the moment of our modern understanding for human sexuality. He was praised, but also condemned for his work. It opened up a new study of psychology, of which people were excited about. We're like, oh, this is all new stuff that we can talk about and study. But it was condemned because some people looked at it as immoral, because sex, basically. Sex is the topic there.
They're not
And
fun.
Right. Yeah. And he's like also talking about, other things like, hey, let's have a real scientific talk about homosexuality and the clitoral orgasm and female sexual pleasure. And like, let's talk about all these other things.
All these great things.
All these great things, right? Yeah, exactly. People are like, well, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
He brought the terms sadism and sadomasochism to the public based on Marquis de Sade. And then he also dug into other things like exhibitionism, fetishism, and divided deviances, as he called them, into 4 categories. So first we have paradoxia, which is sexual desire at the wrong time of life, such as childhood or old age. Anesthesia, insufficient desire. Hyperesthesia, there we go, which is excessive desire. And paresthesia, which is sexual desire for the wrong goal or object. So at the time, this included homosexuality, sexual fetishism, sadism, masochism, and pederasty, which we talked about in ancient Greece, which, the sucking in of air, like, ooh. I do want to note that in this first go around, Krafft-Ebing did label homosexuality as mental illness, as that was the popular view at the time. But later, after studying a bunch of his patients and other people that were gay, he came to the conclusion that homosexuality was neither a perversion nor a mental illness. So he really changed his research over that time, which
Yeah, don't knock it till you try it, bro.
yeah, exactly. Good stuff. So then we have a lot of labels and illnesses and these, quote unquote deviations and whatnot. All the new science and information is exhausting. But you know what else is exhausting, Kelly?
What?
Medical masturbation.
Oh, girl, tell me about the hysteria and the medical masturbation. That's what I'm here
Oh,
for.
hmm I'm
These
glad you
fucking
know exactly where
doctors.
this is going. So
Oh,
even if
yeah.
people, I feel like people that might not necessarily typically be into history, quote unquote, like history buffs or whatever, a lot of them have heard this story. And I am going to tell you all about hysteria and medical masturbation. Hysteria was a very common diagnosis given to women back in the 18th, 19th centuries, although the malady, in air quotes, went back to ancient Greek times. The word hysteria actually means uterus in Greek, as in like hysterectomy, removal of your uterus. In the 19th century, this was frequently diagnosed in women, uterus, usually white women of a higher socioeconomic standing, although it would be sometimes given to other women of other classes and sometimes to men. But it was mostly a very certain kind of social economic class. And symptoms could include all kinds of things. She could faint, mood swings, any mood changes, jerky or bizarre movements, pain, spasms, seizures, vomiting, infertility, anxiety. The list goes on and on. It could be so many things. Historically speaking, the cures were rest, makes sense, yeah, pregnancy, childbirth, or having sex regularly, but the married kind.
Oh.
The other kind's not good for hysteria. That makes you more hysterical, I guess. But married sex is great. And paroxysmal convulsions, which is my favorite. Enter stage left, medical masturbation. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Tell us all about it.
This is one of those history things. It's hilarious. It's fun. Like I said, even if you're not like a big history follower, a lot of people have heard this story. And I'm going to tell you about it, but by telling you about it, I'm going to dispel a huge fucking myth, everybody.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here we go. Detective hat on. If you're not familiar, here it goes. So the story goes that 19th century doctors would treat female patients for their hysteria with masturbation. They would diddle their patients until they had paroxysmal convulsions, an orgasm. And they would feel better and they'd be like, great, thank you, doctor, and be on their way.
See you next week.
Could you imagine the doctor was like really good at it?
Oh.
Like, I'm fainting. Oh, I have to go. I'm having a hysteria fit. Oh, okay.
I'll be back in a couple hours.
Right. He's like, man, I have got more hysteria cases this week. What am I going to do?
My wrist is killing me.
My wrist is killing me. The story then goes to say like doctors would get so tired with doing it, their hands would like cramp up and their arms would cramp up and get tired. They started having like midwives do it, and then the midwives were getting tired. And then they're like, what are we going to do? This is taking like an hour of our precious doctor time. And the doctor, I've got more people to bleed and give smelling salts to,
Yeah,
and
I've got a lobotomy to perform. I don't have time for this.
And so a doctor invented a vibrator, which cut down time to like 5 or 10 minutes. And sometimes she might even have multiple paroxysmal convulsions. Hey-oh.
Hey-oh.
So yeah, sorry, this is a really fun story. And I wish to God it was true, but it's not. And it's actually, it's repeated in like higher levels of journalism and books and stuff. And even movies are made out of it. About it. And it's like this really prevailing myth, really.
Where the fuck were really Mythbusters on that?
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
But I mean, like most things that aren't true, there's a little seed of truth somewhere in there. There's something that's true. Now this is yet another rabbit hole I fell down. I spent like, I think a day and a half or two on just this. And as far as I can tell, I'm fully open to corrections. Yes, it seems that there were maybe some doctors that used to medically masturbate female patients. And I found just enough medical texts and writings from the time to suggest that, yeah, there might have been some doctors that were like, yeah, this is what we need to do. But the majority of doctors were like, no, like masturbation causes hysteria. Like, don't get them too excited. It's going to make everything worse. And so they're actually like, no, actually the opposite of that. But another grain of truth, yes, the electric vibrator was invented in this era, about the 1880s. Dates vary a little bit, but around like
Thank you,
1882, 83.
Victorians.
Yes. And even still, it was invented by a doctor. His name was Dr. Joseph Mortimer Granville. But he designed it as a massager for men for aches and muscle pains and things. And specifically said, like, don't use it on hysterical women.
Because they'll be ruined for life.
I mean, he could have just really sold a lot of vibrators, really. He could have sold a lot of product, but he's like, no, don't do this. In fact, he actually wrote in his book in 1883 called Nerve Vibration and Excitation as Agents in the Testament of Functional Disorder and Organic Disease. Whew.
Wow.
He said, and I quote, I have never yet percussed a female patient. I have avoided and shall continue to avoid the treatment of women by percussion, simply because I do not wish to be hoodwinked and help to mislead others by the vagaries of the hysterical state.
Oh,
I don't want to be hoodwinked by an orgasm. That's basically what's happening. It's like, I don't want them coming to me to wank them off with my new vibrator. So you don't do it on women.
Wow.
So don't let her have too much fun.
Mm-hmm.
But nay, gentle souls, dear listeners, the vibrator, despite what many internet articles and people say, the vibrator was not created by doctors to get their patients off. That is a little bit of truth twisting. You want to hear the tea on this one? So this this came from Rachel Main's book, Technology of Orgasm, which came out in 1999 from Johns Hopkins University Press. So from like a medical publishing and press. In a book that I read for these episodes, which is actually a really great book. It's really fun. It's called A Curious History of Sex by Kate Lister. And it's written in a very like informal, conversational way, like you're hanging out with your friends kind of thing. Great book. But she talks about this as well too. And Rachel Main, who about 11 years later in an online interview said that it was just a hypothesis. Like that's like doctors came up with this because it would have saved them time, and it was just a thought, but people loved it so much that they just took it and ran.
Yeah.
And I've been on the internet. I've been on social media before, and I understand how people can like take stuff and like twist it or like sound bite you and like run with it. And so I was like, oh, well, like, what does it actually say? And I've read a couple pages where this is written, and it's actually written in a very academic way. And she writes it with certainty that this is actually what happened. So historians have since like found this primary sources that she used, and we're like, this isn't what this is saying. You're twisting the truth here. And so that's like it's a whole like history hot tea sort of thing.
No, it is.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, practice safe history, everybody. But I'm so sorry. I wish I could continue and just say, yeah, that story is absolutely true, but it is not. Although, again, there is some truth to it. But I will say with my days with the Victorians, I had some preconceived notions about them that were like wonderfully challenged. And I feel like I came to know them a little bit better. Constantly labeled by history and society as prudish and stuffy, ignorant, or naive about sex and sexuality, or even what an orgasm like a woman's orgasm was. It's just, it's not true.
What's happening?
What's this? Yeah. Oh, they knew. And to prove my point, here's an excerpt from The Romance of Lust, written in 1873. Oh. I'm going to get a little bit of wine for this. Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
Because it's filthy.
Oh, I'm interested. Okay. I like filth.
Definitely quote. She rapidly came to the ecstatic ending, nearly thrusting my whole face into her vast orbit and spurting out a very torrent of sperm all over my face and neck. End quote.
Oh, squirting. I'm here for it.
All over my face and neck.
He loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. Yeah, that's hot.
Fast orbit, though.
Yeah. How vast is this orbit?
How vast is it? What is that? That's why I'm concerned. A vast orbit, like thrusting. I'm thinking she's like arching the back or something. It's like, you know what? Whatever happened, it got him, and he felt it and experienced it, and she experienced it. Right on.
And they were both like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Surprise.
Surprise.
So with that visual firmly planted in our minds, we're going to leave the 19th century behind, as well as Romance of Lust.
Wow.
Holy smokes, I feel like we needed a bit of a break after that one. Can I get you a towel? Do you need a wet nap? Man, I do want to make a little bit of a clarification regarding the mythos around medical masturbation. The myth is that the vibrator was used specifically and created specifically to help doctors and midwives with the masturbation process. In terms of masturbation was done by hand by a few doctors, like I said, there's enough evidence to say that that might have been the case for some, but it's not something that we can say, yes, across the board, this is what doctors were doing. But also, like I said, perfectly open to corrections from historians that know more about this than I do. And we are so glad you're here with us. If you liked what you've heard so far, please subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the platform that you are listening on. If you really like us, please rate, review. Those are all amazing things that help our little podcast move up in the charts, get heard and seen by more people who like history with a fun twist, like you. Maybe share this episode with a friend or on social media. And speaking of social media, please join the online smoke circle, where you can keep up with us the other days of the week when we're not here with you for an episode. Over on Instagram, for example, we're sharing news about the show, little bits of history, as well as history one-hitters, which are short little videos about something that we learned about and wanted to share with you, our history friends. All of our social media accounts are directly linked in the show notes or the show description down below, so just scroll down there and you can find us on whatever social media platform is your favorite. Up next, I am bringing this two-part series on the history of sex to its final conclusion, its climax. The big O, if you will, finishing up with the 20th and 21st centuries. And with that, let's puff pass it on to part 2. Oh, right, we're back. We've gotten ourselves all cleaned up from our blast to our face and neck that we had in the 19th century, romancing the lust or the romance of lust. There we go. So we are back now, and we're going to finish things out in the 20th and 21st centuries. So, Kelly, sexual science, as it was exploding through the 1800s, in the 1900s, it continues to flourish with great discoveries and ideas, and they're testing their hypotheses, and scientists and academics are building off each other's work, and it's wonderful. It's great. 1919 was a good year. So latex condoms were invented.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so latex means that they're thinner, they're more durable, the little stretch to them. But before we were using that vulcanized rubber, which is why they were called rubber. So now we've got latex ones. And also in 1919, a man by the name of Magnus Hirschfeld founded the Institute for Sexology in Berlin. This place was amazing. I loved the sound of this place. It had a huge library, lecture hall. It was a place of research and medical and therapeutic services. It had a bunch of different departments like gynecology, psychotherapy, marriage counseling. And then it also had gender affirming services like hormone therapy and surgery. And also the patients that were going there getting treated, they could stay there too. So they could stay in this like welcoming, safe place.
Yeah.
And then get their care there at the same time. Doctors and psychologists were excited because it was a place of learning and new research. However, also coming about in 1919 was a very dangerous group of people that had Hirschfeld in his crosshairs. And that was, you're making the face. You know it, the Nazi party.
Wah, wah.
So the Nazis come onto the scene in Germany, and they did not like anything that Hirschfeld was doing. So when Hitler actually personally called him out and threatened him. So
Wow.
Yeah, so things were very dangerous for Hirschfeld. And when Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, the brown shirts showed up at the Institute and they just burned everything, all the research, the papers, the journals, and all
Ah,
these experiments that they were, and
that's terrible.
therapies that they were doing. Hirschfeld survived. It seems that he was able to escape at some point and unfortunately watched the destruction of his institute in a movie, like the real news that they would do in a movie
Yeah.
theater in Paris.
Oh,
All that research was destroyed. And then I just think, like, what more we would know now, or how much further we might be ahead in some of those
yes.
sciences than, and
Absolutely, because it's like now there's so much focus on that, for our wonderful trans community and like educating people. And I had no idea that there were so many early pioneers educating people and assisting people. And like that's just really sad because amongst all the other fucking horrible things that we know that that party did and destroyed all this wonderful things, like
Mhm.
that's huge. And you're right, where would we be now if that hadn't have happened?
Yeah. Post the world wars, people were wanting to just like, no more war, please. Let's just decompress. People were moving out to suburbs, new towns are being built up. People are banging, they got the baby boom going
Oh yeah.
on. So baby boom is booming. Sexual science picks up again directly after the war, and Alfred C. Kinsey establishes the sextitude. I think that's what it should be called from now on,
I agree.
sextitudes.
Is it not called that? Because they really missed out.
That's the second time. The first time I nearly said it. That time I got it all the way out. So we have the Institute for Sex Research. And Kinsey created a scale that had 6 points on it. So at one end, you have strictly heterosexual. At the other end, you have strictly homosexual. And then there are different points in between. So it's like a spectrum. And so that's
Ah,
what he started building his research on. And thousands of Americans were studied by Kinsey and his colleagues. And they just continued building on that research, which is why we're understanding more gender as a spectrum today.
absolutely.
Also in the 50s. The start of some very famous, maybe infamous erotica is the launch of Playboy in
Ah,
1953. And on their first issue, they had Marilyn Monroe. She's wearing like this sort of black, deep V cut, like a swimsuit sort of thing.
yeah, head front
And yeah,
back.
she's like, she's smiling. She's like doing a little wave, a little hands up. And uh, on the title, or on the cover, it is, Marilyn Monroe on our first issue, nude and in full color, because things were in color then. You could get color as an option now. And that first issue sold to 50,000 people pretty soon after. And then within their first 5 years, they got over 1 million subscribers. So
Ah,
they are
that's great. We were
right out.
subscribers for years, and
Mhm.
of course, who doesn't love a beautiful female nude? Everyone does. But the articles really were like, and people joke about, oh, I read for the articles, but really, and especially, you know, then, like looking back and like a lot of these authors and correspondents, journalists didn't have another outlet that would share their perspective and their information. And Playboy was, kind of like not only a pioneer with, ooh, sexy pictures, but like also, giving people that wouldn't normally have a voice. And I just think
Mm.
that's so cool.
Well said. I I like the articles. And the thing is, like, I know Playboy, really. I know Playboy because of your subscription to it. I would see them like in the house and stuff. And yeah, there are great articles in there.
And they open the door for so many other people too. So I might not
Mhm.
be a fan of Larry Flint, but man, that magazine, even more so, really just broke down barriers and gave people so much information that you couldn't get elsewhere. I think that's very
Mhm.
cool.
In the 60s, American sexology duo by the name of William H. Masters and Virginia Johnson were doing some yeah, we're doing some research at the time was considered controversial because sex, sex gets people's backs up sometimes, especially at this period of time.
Yeah, prudes.
And their research, though, was observation and psychological monitoring of hundreds of study participants masturbating or having sex. So they were like watching this happen.
Masters of Sex.
Masters of Sex,
Yes.
yeah. And it became a TV series for a time, for a few years, around like 2016 or sort of time, or
Great
maybe a little
show.
earlier than that. Yeah, and I always wanted to watch it, but it was always on like a Showtime or HBO or something like that, and I wasn't
Yeah.
able to see it. But I have a note here saying that it's on Apple TV. So if that's
Nice.
actually the case, I'm going to be searching for
Mm.
that, giving that a
If I
watch.
had a TARDIS, I would be working at that institute and I'd be watching people have sex all day, every day.
With a little
I
clipboard.
mean, what a better way to spend your day than sexual observation? Oh, you could learn so much. It's really cool.
And keep coming home and just being like, oh, babe,
Let me tell you what I
the
seen
day
today.
I've had. This couple went for four, and you have to stand there for the whole 4 hours. How are they? Yeah, I don't know. But
Yeah.
like, my feet are killing me. My legs are exhausted. I was
My
gripping that
wrist is,
pencil on my
yeah.
clipboard. To Masters of Sex, indeed, they actually had a lot of breakthroughs in their research, which lasted for decades. And some of their things were looking at different stages of arousal, the process of vaginal lubrication,
Oh,
muscle
very
tension in
important.
different parts of the body during sex and orgasm, premature ejaculation, and impotence. They did a lot of research in that area. Female pleasure and orgasm, as
Oh.
well as like, hey, they're like, did you know that women could have multiple orgasms?
Yes, we
What?
did.
Can they? Check. There you go. That was, yeah, that was part of, amongst other things, but that was some of their big highlights of their
Ah,
breakthroughs. So, yeah.
so cool.
I like that. And that's really hitting at the same time as something called the sexual revolution in the United States. And women were just basically just questioning the status quo and like gender roles at the time, just to be like, well, hey, why can't I have a career, or why can't I go into politics, or why do I have to get married, what if I don't want to have kids? And a lot of things that were conservative values were thought like that's what a woman should be doing.
Mm,
They're like, well, wait, why though?
yeah.
Who says that I have to do that? And I also think too, just a thought I had along with this, post World War II, or like, I'm sorry, during World War II, and I'll say even maybe a little bit of like the Korean War too, perhaps, but especially in World War II, like there were um, women taking up different positions outside of the house, like going to work
Yeah.
in factories or other businesses, and joining the war effort in some way, or nurses, and uh, baseball, like a league of their own, and
Yes.
sports, like
Yes.
doing other things outside of what a traditional female role might be for women. And God, I love a league of their own. That's the one that popped in my head because we spent some time at there's a place in Rockford, it's a museum, and they'd have World War II days over a
Ah,
weekend where they do like a reenactment, and there's like people walking around and
so
interpreting history and
cool.
enacting it. Um
The Rockford
and the
Peaches.
Rockford Peaches, yeah, there was a gal
Ah,
there, and they
love
were
it.
talking about like women's war effort, and she had her little Rockford Peaches uniform on. It's really cute.
No, that's great though. I loved that movie growing up, and you learn things in school, but then I think a lot of times you learn things, pop culture and movies and
Mm,
things teach us so much. And I just remember watching that movie, and one of the, towards the end of the movies when the war is ending and the guys are coming home, and the guy, they want to end the female league, the baseball, and he said, "Well, what do you want? The men coming home from war to go back to the kitchen?" And we're like, "Well, no, but here you are pushing all these women, like, you finally gave women the chance to visualize and see and experience what life could be like when you're not forced into these roles. And then to, like, force us back to that,
yeah.
you know, it really does show you, like, that caused such an evolution and a revolution of the way that women were thinking, and, like, you know, you could see how that leads to changes even further down the road in the future in like the 50s and the 60s because of that. So, yeah, obviously war is bad. Ooh, boo, war. But it led to so many new experiences for people that I mean, if that hadn't have happened, where would we be now? I don't know. It's interesting to think about it.
I know I would probably be interested in studying more of like that catalyst and how that's
Mm,
changing. Because the 60s here, as I mentioned with like the sexual revolution, there's so many other things going on too. We've got civil rights, LGBTQ plus revolution of sorts, with that uprising, the Stonewall uprising, that all kicks
yeah.
off. And as well as, women's lib, feminism, hippies, love fest, psychedelic era,
Anti-war. Yeah.
yeah, there's so many things like, and yeah, anti-war protests with Vietnam. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in American history
So
in these couple
much.
of decades. But a lot of people blamed the sexual revolution on something called the pill, like
Ah,
capital T, capital P, pill, which is all going to turn out backwards in the final video. I'm trying to spell it with my hands. Um, So the pill was an oral contraception. It was released in 1960, and it had a 99% effectiveness rate in preventing pregnancy, which is pretty amazing because
that's
up to
amazing.
that point, we had for about 80 years running, the diaphragm was the best form of contraception. And even then, its effectiveness was like 83 to 94%, depending on making
Whew,
sure you're all
that's taking a
fit in
hell of a
there all right.
chance. Be using that coitus interruptus along with that diaphragm.
Yep. Coitus interruptus. Hope that pull-out game is strong. And I mean, the diaphragm is the biggest one in terms of like best effectiveness at that time. But there were other forms of contraception. There were spermicides, sponges. There was this really horrific sounding douche where you had to mix your own chemicals to go in it. Like it's like spermicide that you had to mix yourself.
Mm. No thanks. That sounds very
No, thank you.
painful. Burning.
If you didn't mix it quite right, you could die. There were instances of women having maybe the ratios just a little bit different and not making it,
Dang.
which I'm like,
Yeah.
a worst case scenario, it kills you. What other things is it doing then, right? It's probably
Yikes.
burns
Yeah.
it.
Let's not bleach our uteruses.
Yeah.
No. That's
Oh,
horrifying.
yeah. So thank goodness that the pill's an option now. And I was reading different firsthand accounts of women's perceptions about the pill, when it came onto the scene or their attitudes as they reflected back on it. And some more conservative women were more like, well, this means that women are going to be more promiscuous now, like they can have affairs, and where's the consequences there if they're not going to get pregnant. And a couple other ones I read were from married women who lived in more rural areas. So they had less access to getting contraceptions, first off. But also sex education was not as great out in rural
Yeah.
areas. And a lot of women were just like, we're just having sex hoping that we don't not getting pregnant, like hoping this is not the time that it happens. One account was that a younger woman married an older man who was a widower who already had 7 kids. So when they got married, we're good with our 7 kids.
Yeah.
We're
That's
fine.
plenty.
We're good. But they're also like a couple and they want to like have sex, right? So she got on the pill and it put family planning in their hands. And they're like, this is great because now we don't have to worry about being surprised by an extra mouth that we need to feed.
Mm-hmm.
And we can still have our relationship. And then she was able to go to college and get a degree. And she said that like opened up a lot of opportunity for her. So
That's awesome.
yeah. Thing is though, for the first 10 years or so of its existence, only married or engaged women were allowed a prescription for the pill. By 1965, about
Ooh.
5 years later, 40% of married women were on the pill.
Wow.
Yeah. And in 1972, it was opened up for all women to have a prescription for it. Because the government was like,
Yay.
hey, we shouldn't tell people what to do with their bodies. And Canada had a similar bill that they
Isn't that
passed.
funny? Yeah.
What?
Are we regressing here? Like, let's go ahead and remind them of that. Yeah. Get out of
Yeah.
our bedrooms. Get out of my
Yeah.
panties. These
Yeah.
decisions are not yours.
Hands off. You don't,
Hands
a lot
off.
of you don't know how a period works. Like, don't tell me what to do about my body. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oof.
Oh my God.
But that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember again, I love movies so much, and as a kid, like I spent all my time in front of the TV. I remember watching the movie Saturday Night Fever as a kid. Everybody loved John Travolta. Um,
Yes.
but that movie, there's like the pill is prevalent at that
Hmm.
time, and like women, you'd see them like at the bar, like popping their pill. And like there's a scene where John Travolta's like with a woman in the backseat of a car. I won't go into too many details. But he's basically like, "You're on the pill, right?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Er," like, stop, full stop, because, it was one, yes, at that time, it was newly accessible to non-married females, but it just put so much power in women's hands where like they were proud of it. Like, you know, and yes, I understand what, some conservatives were concerned about, promiscuity and, going out and having fun, but damn it, sex is fun. And why should men have all the fun? So thanks, pill.
Mid 20th century also sees a new rise in sex toys and erotica. Ooh
Ooh,
la la,
two of
this is
my
the fun
favorite
stuff.
things.
An effect of the sexual revolution was not looking at masturbation as something shameful. For women, it was knowing that sex feels good and you should feel good about experiencing pleasure and taking that pleasure into your own hands. It
Yes,
means the
learning your
vibrator is
own
back,
body.
guys.
Yes, in a big way.
Mm. There was an artist and sex educator who, her name was Betty Dodson, and she started teaching a women's only masturbation class in New York City.
Oh,
Yeah. And so she was using these like 60s models from Oster and Panasonic, which makes me just think of like blenders and stuff.
and TVs.
But that's what she was using. And then in the 70s, early 70s, Hitachi comes along with the
Bum, bum,
magic wand.
bum.
Yeah. So if you don't know what the
Yes,
magic wand is here, if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, it's up there for you.
it's what Samantha uses on Sex in the City.
That's right. Yes. And like this and another sex toy I'm going to talk about made it big, or like, well, I should say like had a lot of screen time and
And they still
attention
do.
brought to it from Sex in the City, for sure. The Hitachi Magic Wand, it is still going very strong today, and Ms. Dodson helped sales of the Hitachi Magic Wand when she was using it for her workshops and her demonstrations things, and when she was talking about it. And she said in a 1974 article of Ms. Magazine, quote, "I have found that the vibrator gives me the strongest and most consistent form of stimulation and is especially good for women who have never experienced orgasm." End
Oh,
quote.
those poor women. Yeah.
I know. And I just had like that moment because like, I was like, damn, I'm really happy for women. If
Right?
I had mentioned the vibrator, that kind of thing, like, there's so much shame around masturbation, I think in general, but especially for women or haven't experienced an orgasm at all. And so, yeah,
Oh,
now there's like this device that exists that, helps them experience that with themselves or a partner. And just like, oh, like how great that that's something
it is
that
great.
like existed then.
Can you
And
imagine where we would be without them? I
I
mean, I don't know about the rest of you girls, but like vibrators are a big deal in this house. And yeah, you got to have that external stimulation to get you there. I'm just saying.
well, yeah. And, and that was part of her thing too, is like talking about like being able, like feeling good about it, feeling good about yourself doing it. And then being able to like learn about yourself and like things that you like and like how you can like as a form of self-love, basically. She's like, yeah, you're almost like educating yourself on yourself, on sex. But
Yeah.
in 1973, Playgirls published, and women were like, hell yeah, give us Burt Reynolds naked on a
Ooh.
bearskin rug.
Mhm. Looking so
We
hot.
want beefy, hairy men with big mustaches.
Those photos hold to the test of time. They
They
really
do.
do. He was a sexy, sexy man. Wow.
Oh, I want to get a copy of that, and I'll put it up in the gentleman bathroom alongside like James Dean and Steve
Oh,
McQueen.
please do. I mean, everybody can love their Velvet Elvis. I would rather Burt Reynolds any day.
Same.
Oof. I know what
Velvet
you're getting
Elvis.
for Christmas. Burt
It'd be the
Reynolds.
one color photo out of the black and white ones. I would love it. So it really It really
really
pops.
pops. Yeah.
Oh, you can go over the door or something. Oh, so good. The 70s were a good time. I mean, well, I should say maybe not across the board, but early 70s, sex history wise, there's a lot of great things going on. And in 1972, so just to rewind a year, I guess, the book The Joy of Sex comes out from British doctor Alex Comfort.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing
Dr.
those on
Comfort.
bookshelves at my family's house at Christmas.
Yes, I was going to ask. I was
Yeah.
like, I feel like I just remember as a kid, I feel like I've seen that on a few like living room, like public bookshelves in private homes, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Joy of Cooking right next to the Joy of Sex.
Yes.
Thought nothing of it.
Yeah. I was just like, I understood what sex meant. Like I knew what the word sex was and kind of what it meant. It was like grown up dirty stuff or whatever, like ew. But I didn't think like I don't know, just didn't even like think twice about it. Whatever.
It was very mainstream.
It's basically like a very illustrated cookbook, if you will, of sexual pleasure and positions. You know, they're like, here's this stuff. And Dr. Comfort wrote it alongside his wife and his mistress, who was his wife's best friend. So that's a very interesting
very
little triangle there.
progressive.
And they had Polaroids. So they were just like taking pictures of them or others, I'm not sure, in these different positions. And we're like, okay,
Wow.
right. This is for research. This is for science.
Science.
Yeah. Maybe you can like label it down there like this is what we call the happy crab or something.
This is a pile driver. Yeah.
The Doomstone. Are these wrestling moves at this point? What's going on? I mean, yeah, it's kind of like that.
Could
Give him the people's elbow. Right. But so the Joy of Sex, it still exists. There have been different spin-offs of the Joy of Gay Sex, the Joy of Lesbian Sex, and it's been also re-edited or revamped in 2008. So there's a newer version of it now. But yeah. And although Dr. Comfort said without any sort of specific scientific backup or sources at the time that he said it, at least, he said everyone is bisexual. But it wasn't until the late 70s, right? I was like, oh, all right. But it wasn't until the late 70s when that as research began to get really dug into. And so what was more bisexual research towards the late 70s, led by Fred Klein, just kind of put a cap on sexual science and research from like this point out, really. It's sexual orientation, cis and transgender studies, gender fluidity, non-binary folks have all been a focus of sexual science research for the latter part of the 20th centuries and then 21st. So that's kind of where things stand with that. Yeah. So we're going to go back to the non-scientific dry stuff. We're going to get to the wet stuff. We're going to go to sex toys. I was just going to follow where my voice was going. I'm like, oh, my brain's taking me somewhere, and I'm just going to go along with it. So,
yep.
In the wet zone, here we are. So just to recap, 60s and 70s, we have the vibrator back again, the Hitachi magic wand. And now it's the 80s. We're going to tight roll our pants and get a lot of Aquanet. Yeah. Oh, man, so much Aquanet. Put on your
all the hair.
Huey Lewis in the News.
Yeah, maybe like a
shoulder pads,
denim jacket. I still wear one. It's fine.
Yes, absolutely. Get yourself all put together here because Japanese company Vibratex is bringing vibrators with internal vibrating components in addition to external ones. Well, a lot of places in the world at this time, even still, have obscenity laws. Japan's obscenity laws were such that Vibratex wouldn't have been able to sell their products. So they're like, well, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make them in bright colors. It'll be like purple and pink or yellow or whatever. Put them in bright colors. And then we're going to put little animal shapes on everything.
Oh, the rabbit ears.
The rabbit ears. They had the beaver, the kangaroo, the turtle, and their biggest one, the rabbit.
None of those things are very sexy, but especially not the turtle. Like, I'd love to see a picture of that one. I had the rabbit. I mean, that was one of the first ones I ever had. I
Yeah.
think that's true for most girls our age. It's like,
Hmm.
yep, those little vibrating rabbit ears.
Yeah.
That really should
If you have
really
no idea what
worked.
we're talking about, this is what it looks like here on the Spotify and YouTube. Yeah. So as you're looking at it, there's an internal component, which is like, I don't know, the vibrator dildo-y sort of part of it. It's more penis-like, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Phallic.
But the yeah, but the outside bit that curves up, it's in the little shape of a rabbit, and the little rabbit ears, as the motor vibrates and moves, it makes the little rabbit ears go like like that,
The
and that's how you get your
tickler.
external stimulation as well. So
Yeah.
I'm just imagining what like a beaver looks like. I was like, I didn't realize that they made him in much more than like
Yeah.
a butterfly and the rabbit and
The dolphin.
the
Yeah.
dolphin. That's what I was saying. I thought there's like a third animal on there. But yeah, beaver, kangaroo,
Be-
turtle.
Yeah, I'm gonna not so hot.
Maybe that's why we don't know those so well, and the rabbit is the standout one. Maybe they're
Yeah.
like, you know what? These were the ones that maybe didn't work so much. And that's one where, in Sex in the City, that's the other sex toy I was talking about. I think, is it Charlotte? She gets addicted to it or something like that. And
I
there's like a
think that's
whole, like,
right.
yeah. So that got a lot of its fame also through Sex in the City too. And sex toys for women have evolved over time. We've got the
Oh
magic wand,
yes.
the bullet, the rabbit. These are like ones that have really stood the test of time. And, we've got now things that are like uh, suction and G
Yeah,
spot
little
and
tongue.
doubles and tongue. Yeah, like all
Yeah.
kinds of different things in all shapes and sizes and colors and nubbies and all different things. So things have really, really grown.
Yeah.
And like Walmart and Targets, like big box stores, are selling sex toys now. Well, like,
Which is
and
so it's cool, but like the first time you notice, you're like, wait, what? I
there's
was
a
here for
lot
eye
of them too.
drops and I turned around and I'm like, there's a bunch of like, and not just like bullets, like, oh, like quaint little, like, I'm talking like full on.
I've seen anal plugs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm so pleased.
I've not seen it with my own eyes yet, but a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, sent a Snapchat that was like, "So this is at Walmart now," and I was like, "Like, wait!" And I actually was looking at the snap for a long time because it's not like a little 4 foot shelving section; it's like
No,
a
it's an
few
aisle.
huge collection. And I was like, Walmart, I am incredibly impressed. So
Yeah, it really
there
is a
you go.
one-stop shop.
It really is. And then you have self checkout now, so you can just get it without having somebody be like, "Lube, bloop, sex toy, bloop, this thing, bloop,
Uh, no, I'd rather
eye
go to the
drops,
actual
bloop,
checkout and just dead eye the cashier the whole time. Like, it's going to be a
pint
good
of ice
Friday.
cream." You're like, you know what I'm doing later.
Yeah.
Making
Wine,
eye contact.
candles, vibrator, lube. They're like, oh, somebody's having a party. I sure am.
Party for one.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So everything has grown and expanded, which is really fantastic. But I guess before I get too far ahead in the timeline, the 80s and 90s brought forth new technology for sex toys, sure, but also sex work. So we have Playboy, Playgirl, rise in pornographic movies through the mid-century. But I feel like
Skinamax.
the 80s and the 90s were the 900 number girls. Do you remember those?
Golly. I
Yeah.
do remember those. I forgot about them until you said that. But yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
10 o'clock weekday, MASH is over, you watch Night Court, and the next thing you know, every other commercial is call me. And then these dirty 900 numbers, or the Psychic Friends Network, then yeah. 900 numbers. Kids nowadays don't even know what that is.
So if you don't know, yeah, there would be these commercials, as you mentioned, at night, and they'd be like minimal clothes, and they have a really sexy voice, and they'd be like, "Call me, I'll fulfill your fantasies and whatever your needs or whatever." And so and you call this 900 number, not on your cell phone, you get
On
probably
your
a rotary
rotary.
phone.
It took forever.
Or if you had like your cordless phone go boop, well,
Yeah.
the biggest antenna in the world on it. And yeah, you'd call and you would basically just talk to somebody with a really sexy voice who would dirty talk to you. And it wasn't cheap. Like,
No,
do you remember? I remember it being a
like
like a
three
dollar a
ninety
minute
nine
or
a m
2 or 3,
oh,
something like
yeah,
that.
like, a lot. Yeah.
It adds up, you know? Totally remember those, and I completely forgot until I'm, like, looking at this and learning about, tart cards, which were, see, like, like, in Vegas, they'll have, like, Naomi's new in town, and
Oh,
she
yeah,
wants
yeah,
to, it's almost like baseball cards for sex workers, like Pokemon cards.
everybody's trading them.
I've got a +3 dexterity.
Oh, you've got the new Shannon. You guys got this one yet?
I've got her in her black lingerie, but this one's her red lingerie.
Woo
I don't know.
woo!
Do you think like the 900 numbers? Do you think they still exist? Like, is that something you could get a job at?
I mean, if so, I'm definitely interested because I would rather talk about sex with somebody all day than do what I do. But it also begs the question, like, I want to know from like, ask your husband, ask your British friends, like, were 900 numbers a thing in England? Were they calling these numbers too?
Yeah, I'll have to ask because the tart cards actually that was sort of like how they have it in Las Vegas. That was how it was over in England. Christian did
Okay.
say, because I was like, oh my gosh, Christian, is this something that you would see? And in the red phone boxes back when they were red, there'd be these little stickers or like the numbers and the pictures of these. Like, I'll step on your balls for $50,
Oh,
like
cover you in Hoover
sue.
dust for 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hoover dust.
Sorry, Graham Norton. Love that
I
episode.
love that episode. Um, yeah, so it's kind of like the same thing, but that was like still in-person sex work. So I'll have to ask him about the 900 numbers.
Yeah. The safe distance sex work where,
Right.
you
Yeah. And that
just
was
tell people
something
the
else.
filthy things you're going to do to them. Ooh.
I know.
Ooh.
And that was exactly what something I was going to mention too, is like that safety of being distanced from someone. These women were able to like get paid usually pretty well, if they were, I suppose you still have to be good at what you're doing, but they would get paid because if they could keep somebody on the line for a while, it's more money that you're making, and they
Yeah.
were at a safe distance, so were not didn't really have to worry about physical harm or also STIs.
Yeah.
We are at the peak also of the AIDS epidemic during this sort of time, which
Yeah.
disproportionately affected gay men and minorities. Flourished for a time. It was very big. It was huge. You'd see those commercials everywhere, and then I don't know if they still exist, but
I
yeah.
don't know either, but I question, do you think those sex operators were working like in an office building? Like, were you in a cubicle, like hearing somebody next door doing the Psychic Friends Network, and the one on the other side of me is talking about like, railing somebody up the ass, and like, just all these different conversations happening. Like, that's the kind of office I'd like to work in. So if that is still a thing and anyone's listening and knows about this, please, let me know. I'll submit my resume. But no, yeah, 900 numbers. Is that still a thing? Hmm.
You could make it a thing again. We really could just
Yeah.
rent
Bring
office
that
space and
back.
say, like, hey, do you want to be our 1-800 psychic? Okay, yeah. Do you want to do some tarot card readings? Okay, cool. Yeah. How about you? You want to be one of our sex call girls? And yeah, me too. And then just like the chaos of uh the office conversation that you hear. Like, I would just love to just be like walking to lunch and
Yes.
hearing what the different cubicles are doing.
Feel like the Wolf of Wall Street, like that crazy debauchery in the office. Like that's what I'm picturing. So yeah,
We have a lot of questions, so I'll have to do some extra homework then for you, Kelly, and let
please
you know
report
how it
back.
goes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll report back because now I would like to know. So if anybody out there knows, also let us in on the knowledge. With regards to AIDS, I do want to talk about this real quick. It's extremely important in history.
Mm,
Um, we were not going we're not going into it for tonight's episode because really it should be its own topic, or like its own episode, I should say.
for sure.
But the AIDS epidemic marks the end of what is known as the sexual revolution. So, like mid to late 80s is where sexual revolution as a label is getting wound down.
Got it.
And as one revolution ends, another one begins. And the 1990s sees the birth of a little newfangled invention by the name of the internet. And
Ooh.
holy shit, kids. it was hot. It was revolutionary. And over time, as it got better and it got more information, it was more user friendly, and everyone kind of got used to how the internet worked. You didn't
Everyone
have to
realized you
ask
didn't
your
have to
friend.
pay for porn.
Yeah, you didn't have to pay for. Right. And like all this information is now at our fingertips, and you didn't have to be so bashful about talking to your friends about it, or like having to ask, a family member, an older brother or sister or something like that, or like me, you're opening your 17 magazine or Cosmopolitan and being like,
Yeah.
what's
30 things to do to
orgasm?
drive him wild.
I
Mm.
know. Oh my gosh. Quick, get some pop rocks, get some tin foil, a hairbrush, a scrunchie, and a baseball bat. And you're like, what am I doing with these things?
Am I kidnapping and murdering someone, or am I trying to get him off? I mean, that sounds
Tin foil.
horrifying.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, they had some bonkers ass stuff, and I swear they were just like drawing things out of a hat, being like, "Oh yeah, I've got tinfoil. Oh yeah, cool. Let's where are we gonna put that? Let's wrap it around his dick. Oh, okay, yeah, that'd be great." Like,
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I actually literally saw that as like tinfoil around the. I'm like, no. One, I can't
It's
imagine that
sharp.
even is good at all. Let
No.
alone if you're the person receiving and you're seeing this happening, you're kind of like watching it go like that. Rip, go. You're like, you know what? It's good. You know what? I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm good.
Yeah. I'll just do this myself.
I'll do
Yeah.
it myself. I'm
I mean,
fine.
anyone that's
Thank
ever
you so
bitten
much.
down on a piece of tinfoil, that horrific feeling, you're not putting that shit anywhere near sensitive
No,
areas.
shouldn't be
No.
in your body. Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
biting into tinfoil, the worst feeling. Sex information, as well as like sexual products and sexual services, and so much porn and erotica.
All of
So
it.
much. All that you could possibly ever consume. People can write their own erotica and literature and publish it out on the internet and put it in blogs. And there's the rise of webcams and chat rooms. And so people are able to have, again, kind of like the 900 girls, like webcams they can see, that adds a different visual experience then, but it's like the same thought process. And then 2016, OnlyFans comes about, and it allows people to start their own
Oh.
sex work while allowing control over their content and, like membership in a sense.
Yeah.
So,
Pay for pictures of feet, all the
yeah,
things. Like, that's brilliant.
I know. I'm like, good for you guys doing it out there, get it.
Yeah.
Pornhub is actually, it's the largest website for, all this free porn, but it's also the number 4 website in the United States in terms of most visited website. So Google is number 1, YouTube's number 2, then Facebook, which is kind of a weird one to me, and
What?
then Pornhub is number 4, which beats out Amazon at number 6. I thought it was going to
That's
go Amazon where
shocking.
Facebook was,
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised Pornhub's number 4. I personally don't. I mean, I don't. I'm sure I've been on Pornhub, but like, I don't know. Shout out to Bolesico. That's the porn site made by women for women. It's fabulous. But yeah, I think we need to bump up those numbers. Let's get rid of Facebook. Let's bring Pornhub up. I'm surprised Amazon's not number 1.
I know. I was actually really surprised with its ranking. That was June 2023, just so you know where I'm getting my information from. And it's
That's
from
very recent.
SEMrush, which was if they're was it the analytics company? So they look at web traffic and analyze that. So that's where I got that one from. But on the top 20 most visited websites in the United States, 4 of them are porn sites. So there's
Hey.
Pornhub at number 4. And then there's another one I recognized what it was. And then there are 2 other that I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I suspect I know what that is. And don't worry. In the name of science, I checked all 4 of them and was like, oh yeah, these are all what they say
Good
they
job.
are. I can verify. So 4 of the of the 20 as of June 2023. And speaking of sex and, love and all these things at our fingertips, in our pockets, allowing us to connect to people in an instant, Tinder and other dating apps, or hookup apps sometimes as they're known, depending on which ones they are, allow people to swipe left and right through anyone nearby looking for a one-night stand or an actual relationship, and maybe get married and fall in love and all that stuff. I don't know. Live forever and ever together. It happens, yeah. Speaking of married, I do want to point out, just while we're on the topic of marriage here, it's important for me to say that there are now 34 countries in the world that have affirmed and legalized same-sex marriage. Mostly Oceania, so like Australia, New Zealand, a lot of countries in North and South America and Europe. Most of Africa, except for like in the South there, most of Africa and nearly all of Asia, except Taiwan, are just, I'm going to say they're not there yet. From our primitive and prehistoric intercourse beginnings with microbrachias to pulling out a little tiny mega computer from our back pockets and stuff.
With all the porn.
All the porn. You can find any sort of sexual connection or gratification you can think of, like whatever you want, it's there. Humans are and were sexual beings all through our history, regardless of the constraints that society placed upon them. We've progressed in our understanding of how and why and what makes us who we are in our sexuality. Why do we like the things that we do? Why do we like the people that we like? And the pendulum is always swinging, it's like reckless, wild abandon with the 18th century libertines and unchecked hedonism. And then you have shame and repression and guilt and repression of rights and people. And I feel, and this is just not even studying sexual history, but just in my brief time studying history in the way I have been for this podcast, I feel like that swinging pendulum helps actually pull us into moderate progress forwards. And I think that helps us better understand ourselves and one another as we go through that process too.
Absolutely.
And the history of sex is continuous. We are not done yet, my darlings, when it comes to sex. I think we as humans are going to be continuing to add more into this very, very long, complex history. But we'll be able to see it unfold and, to the degree that it does in our lifetimes. But that's where we are for now with it.
I love it. What a great subject. I could literally talk about it all day. If you ever,
right. Yeah.
ever want to talk about,
we're exhausted and satisfied, and we drop down to the bed and we're like, oh, wow, what a time. Was it good for you, Kelly?
It was good for me. It was.
I don't know if there's anybody else like Katie. I love you so much. I'm glad you're feeling better and I hope you're having a great time on your trip. But I can't imagine anybody else I would rather talk about this with, so I'm so glad that this worked out, that part 2 we get to chat together.
Thank you. Me too. And we'll obviously be continuing this conversation outside of the show, as we always do. And, continue on with my book talk, dirty smut list that's continuously going. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share my joy of sex.
It was my pleasure, wholly and completely. Thank you so much. And so glad to have you on. We're going to do it again. We'll find another topic that fits our Kelly Ramsey so well. We'll think of one for you and have you back on because it was so much fun. And I hope you guys have all had a wonderful time as well too, hanging out with us in the smoke circle. We're cozy. We're just got to absorb and decompress from all that we've learned in episodes 69 and 70. And then when we come back again in a couple weeks, it'll be our last episode for season 1. We're going to be doing some spooky Halloween sort of themed episode for that one, for episode 71. But until then, folks, get money, get high, give love, and everyone killing.
Get laid.
Get laid. Yeah. Yes. Feel the pleasure and practice safe sex.
Yeah.
And get laid. But do it responsibly. But also have so much fun. Have so much fun. Oh my God.
All the fun.
It's the longest ending ever. Bye, everybody. Mwah.